Welcome back. It is 23 minutes to 1 and you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News. Now, the clue is in the name of the show. I really enjoy chatting to friends of mine, old and new. But my next guest is a very old friend, a titan of news broadcasting who's delivered the news from many networks here in the United Kingdom. She's also a member of the Prime Minister's Holocaust Commission. Natasha Kaplinsky joins me live now from her home in Sussex. Hello, you.
Oh, how lovely to see you, Al. Next time I want to be sitting next to you on the sofa, please.
That's an absolute promise. I'm delighted. You've known for a couple of days that I really wanted to have this conversation, and we both go into totally serious mode about it because last Thursday was Holocaust Memorial Day, and it's a profoundly personal mission for you, isn't it?
It certainly is. And that came about, actually, Elle, after you and I stopped working together. I was the subject of one of the BBC's amazing programmes, Who Do You Think You Are?, where I discovered that many members of my father's family were murdered by the Nazis in Belarus. It was an extraordinary experience. I mean, absolutely traumatic beyond belief, but also to have a television camera as you discover all this about your family. But as a consequence of that, about a year after that programme was broadcast in 2014, when David Cameron was Prime Minister, I was invited to be part of a new Holocaust Commission that he was establishing, essentially trying to work out what this country needs to do better to memorialise one of the darkest hours in history. And that ended up with me volunteering as the only journalist on the board to interview 112 Holocaust survivors who had never before shared their extraordinary experience. And it was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, but also the greatest honour.
Yeah, I'll come to the detail of that in a moment, but I want to take you back to the brilliant programme, Who Do You Think You Are? And it had a similar impact on our mutual friend, Rob Rinder. Stephen Fry was aghast and said, you know, I might not have been here had my grandfather not fled and been helped out. Your dad's a lovely guy, and I so admired him. Did he not talk about it? Did he not know about it?
Yes, he did to a degree, but I think it's a fairly it's fairly standard that those that are involved in it generally try to hide the trauma from their families as a way of protecting them and facilitating growth and moving forwards. And towards the end of people's lives who are involved in the Holocaust, certainly the survivors that I met, there was this almost panic that, you know, that they suddenly realized that they didn't have long left on this earth, and they really wanted something positive to have come out of such a hugely horrific experience for them. And many of the survivors I spoke to said it was the last thing they wanted to do before they died, and a number of them went on to die very soon after the interviews. And what's so sad is, you know, every year that passes, fewer and fewer of them are still alive to tell their tale. And so that's why it felt so important to, you know, conduct those interviews. It took 15 months. It was hugely traumatic for everybody involved, but it feels like a very important piece of history to have documented.
Absolutely. And what I find extraordinary as well is that, like those extraordinary gentlemen who lived through the First World War, sadly none with us now, such was the horror of it, and being in a concentration camp even worse, they themselves didn't want to talk about it. It took someone like you, very good, but also crucially empathetic, to just sit calmly down with these people who'd seen the worst of humanity and just talk gently about it. That takes a real skill, Tash.
Thank you very much for saying that, Al. I mean, you know, the chief rabbi at the time said it was a sacred task, and it genuinely felt like it was. Each interview took at least 5 hours. Family members were invited to accompany the survivor. Very often they were listening to their stories for the very first time as well. There was a huge amount of preparation, but also a lot of aftercare, because talking about the stories that they shared clearly was very traumatic for them. And so it was a huge responsibility. And I hope that we handled it as best we could. There was a lot of tears, and not just from them, but from me. I mean, I've never cried so much. It was just such an onslaught of horror to imagine that humanity is capable of such suffering and cruelty. It was a huge life lesson. But what the survivors are determined to do, and I hope that I'm helping to help with this sense of peace as they pass out of this world, is that we do have to learn from that period in history, and we do have to try and work together to make sure it never is repeated.
People have written a great deal, and the lovely Hugo Rifkin wrote an amazing piece that he put onto Twitter about family connections, and there are great biographies, and there are even films like Schindler's List. But what you did is what academics call the oral history. It is the actual words of the human beings, the men and women themselves. And that's a unique contribution that will, I hope, be cherished in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. Did you feel that sense of responsibility when you were doing it?
Absolutely huge. I felt a huge sense of responsibility, that primarily actually to the survivor, to make sure that I handled it as best I could. But actually, as you know, Alastair, this is only part of what the UK government have been doing and continue to do to memorialise that part of history. The oral history was part of a bigger project, which of course, hopefully will end up in a learning centre and memorial right next to the House of Parliament. We've been granted planning permission. So far, the government have committed £75 million to this project, with further many millions needing to be fundraised. But this hopefully will be the focal point of commemoration in this country. It will be a world-class facility. The planning has been granted. We're going through a small process of judicial review at the moment, and let's hope very soon the first spade will be in the ground, and that in time we'll be able to welcome visitors from around the world to a really special memorial and learning centre, and that's where the Holocaust interviews that I conducted will be housed.
Extraordinary. The Echo Eternal charity festival on Wednesday night was a pretty powerful thing. Before we talk about it, I think we've got a clip. Have we got it? Yes, we have. Let's just play a little bit of this for the folk at home so they know what we're talking about.
We are the voices of the voiceless. We are the voices of the voiceless. We are the voices of the voiceless.
They live with us, through
us.
I was prisoner 8,431.
The trains arrived, and then, without any notice, they got all the women and they rushed them straight away back into the trains. Couldn't even say goodbye to anybody.
So those spoken words, but also what struck me as being so powerful about that was it used other art forms, spoken word, music, lighting, and then the contributions from the actual interviews, and young people right at the heart of it.
So it's wonderful that you showed a clip of Harry Ulmer, one of the survivors. I was lucky enough on Wednesday to be sitting next to Harry, and he is in his 90s, and he was there to witness the performance that we were there to see in Birmingham. So Echo Eternal is a really beautiful project that's come out of the survivor testimony. It's a commemorative arts, media and civic engagement project which is delivered through schools, bringing diverse communities together, helping to create a harmony and amongst other things, combating hate crime. It's a project that started off in Birmingham and it's been delivered in Liverpool, and a Dulwich school took part this year as well. Liverpool, as I said, Lipper. It's a beautiful project which really helps the younger generation to echo eternally the horrors of that period. And we're hoping that it's going to travel through all the schools in the country eventually. We've got big ambitions for Echo Eternal.
Wish it well. Just a profoundly important and good project. I was also thinking, I remember chatting to your dad as well. I mean, your family has been through it. He's a brilliant economist and was hounded out of South Africa, having seen the horrors of apartheid, which he stood against. I mean, not once but twice have such horrific things befallen your family.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? We were just talking about echo eternal, but that's a family echo, isn't it? But maybe that's made us all committed to make sure that the world is slightly better when we leave than now we're here. I mean, I think there are so many amazing projects going on, but again, through Who Do You Think You Are? My father's a very, very modest man, but it was wonderful to be able to discover a bit more about his own personal heroism in South Africa and the sacrifices that he and many of his friends and colleagues made to try and make South Africa a more equal place. It's certainly given me a real sense of determination and responsibility to continue a little bit of his fight because yes, he is a titan himself.
A damn fine economist as well, but that's a separate issue. You also are very much a family person, and we've had the honour of knowing that a little bit. But the book that your two children came up with, I just think is absolutely... The only other person I know who's done something similar to it is Ronnie Wood of the Great Rolling Stones, who did readings for people suffering during lockdown. There's the picture of it. For folk at home listening on radio, it's called Letters from Lockdown, Famous Faces, Frontline Workers, Stay-at-Home Heroes. Natasha, it was not your idea, it was your children's idea, but my God, you got some people to take part in it.
Well, do you know what? So this is a project in lockdown. We decided, I've always written lots of letters. Hopefully, Alastair, you've received many of my letters, but I love writing letters. And so it's rubbed off on the children. In lockdown, we wrote to people every single day, starting off with friends and family. You know, how are you? We're lonely. Are you lonely? You know, what are you doing with your time? And then we just upped the game and we just wrote to everybody. And like you, Al, I've done lots of favours in my life to lots of different people. So I called in a few favours and we've had some amazing responses. I'm president of Barnardo's, so all the proceeds, the publisher profits of the book go to Barnardo's, and it's a gorgeous collection of lockdown experiences from the likes of Ed Sheeran to Bill Gates, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, I mean, loads of people. But the children didn't always know who they were writing to when I said
Paul McCartney was another. No, you don't have to trouble. My children meet top show jumpers, and when they were little ones, they didn't know who they were. They certainly do now. You mentioned Barnardo's. You're also a Save the Children ambassador. For both of you, it's kids, isn't it?
Always. I mean, it's the biggest pleasure. It wasn't easy having children. I struggled like lots of women to have kids. And so when I eventually got them, and you were a very kind friend supporting me through that struggle, but when I eventually got my children, I mean, my word, they were the most precious thing, like every parent knows. But yes, I mean, I'm labelled by them as being very, what do they call me? OP, overprotective. But too bad. I love them so much. But yes, you find us in the countryside today. We live on a farm in Sussex. I keep saying that all the animals that I bring into the farm are really for the children, but the truth is they're really for me.
Well, I was going to say, we've nearly done in terms of time, but I did boast at the beginning that we've been friends for a very, very long time, and we certainly have that love of our children very much in common, but we're also utterly stupid and crazy about animals. The only one I've ever fallen out with you over is I'm pro-horse, you're pro-alpaca.
Oh yes, I'm a complete alpaca lover. Oh gosh, that's little Doodle. In fact, this is Millie the alpaca, and yes, they've all got crazy names ranging from the Duke of Sheffield to Lady Lila. We've even got Alastair. Oh, there we go. Highland Cow. This is Mabel. I don't know. I'm slightly frightened of horses. I'm in full respect of them. But yes, Mabel is, I find, a little bit easier to deal with. And that's my next job. After speaking to you, I'm going out to give Mabel some carrots.
There's no better way to spend a Sunday afternoon than A, talking to Natasha Kaplinsky, and then B, imagining her lovely husband and her two lovely little ones going out to feed an array of creatures. Natasha, back into serious mode. Thank you for what you did for the Holocaust Memorial work, and I really do hope that project where we can have a centre for study and reflection. I think one of the most important things I did with our kids was to take them to the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam, just let them take it in and make their own minds up. But hearing those stories truly important. We've done. Love to you and the whole family, and thank you so much for what you've done, and thanks for your time.
Alastair, I can't wait to see you. Please, I want to see you very soon. Lots of love to you. Thank you.
Take care. There we go. Natasha Kaplinsky, broadcaster, member of the Prime Minister's Holocaust Commission, mum and keeper of alpacas.